call the meeting to order. And let's see, I think just we had some wrap up on the minutes. Did people have a chance to take a look at what Tom Lockwood had sent around? This was going back to February 22 and April 19th. We had a couple rounds of minutes to approve. So I guess let me look for a motion to accept the 2 months of minutes. And someone second that? Yeah, Tom, dutifully done it. Any more discussion on them? Did people have a chance to take a look? They seem okay?
Yep.
Well, then all in favor? Got an enthusiastic round of hands there, and so we'll accept those, and Tom can send them off. And then I've got some items for chairman's report I'll bring up. None are so large or important, but the first was the Coastal Commission strategic plan that we voted to adopt the other meeting. I have forwarded that to the Board of Selectmen. It was essentially the same thing that I had given to them for our, I think they called it our reestablishment for the beginning of the year. So they, Jamie Stevenson, are certainly familiar with it. And we're getting a date on the Board of Selectmen's calendar to have them approve it as a strategic plan, which I'm hoping is just a formality, but if there are any changes, we'll come back and talk with everybody, it having met our approval. So so I'll let you know on what we get for a date there, and anyone would be welcome to join me on that meeting. I think the presentation of it's going to be perfunctory, but on the other hand, if they dig into an issue area, I'd be glad to have anyone either co-present up front or join that discussion. So I'll let you know that date, and we'll go from there. Second item here, I have identified a real good candidate for the seat left open by Frank Kemp at the beginning of this year. And that's a fellow, well, I talked to a couple fellows over at the Norotan Bay Association. And the idea is to get someone not regularly to fill the seat, such as Darien Boat Club and New York Yacht Club, Norotan Yacht Club do for us, because they're in our charter. But to informally try to, whenever we can, get a Norotan Bay Association member, if there's a qualified individual there, because they, represent I guess, another waterfront group in that they have their own mooring area and dock area, pier. So I think they represent a good voice to bring to the table. And prior, we had Palmer Sparkman on the commission for, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years. But that now has been several years ago. So anyway, we've identified a candidate, and I asked several of you to reach out to him and schedule up interviews. And he seems awfully anxious to join, or enthusiastic about joining, and felt he had a lot of things he could bring to us, as well as he was looking forward to bringing back our message and thoughts on things to the Norotan Bay Association, so to harmonize our practices, if you will. So on the people I asked to interview him, let me know. And if he seems to go, we'll forward the name on to the selectmen and the nominating committee for their votes.
Yeah, I met him today, Bill. Very nice guy. We had a drink down at the yacht club and just talked about things. And he seems like he'd be a good fit for the commission.
Super.
I'm meeting him tomorrow.
Great. That was my impression too. It's really nice to find someone enthusiastic, and I guess he moved into town several years ago and lives in the Bay, has some kids, and is their like beachfront manager. So he's actively involved in all things coastal there. So the next thing I was going to do, I'm going to ask if you're all okay with this, but before I do it, I was going to suggest we take a poll about what people feel about meeting in person. Now that I've called there's a hands quickly shooting. I've called the town hall and asked if people are meeting in person for the commissions. And Kate Bush told me no, that no one is yet meeting. And Lori, that's your impression also across all groups?
There has been absolutely no information or guidance coming from town hall, which I find sort of surprising. You would think they would be taking leadership on this, but it's been nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it's sort of strange because, May 19, as I understand it, the governor's opening things pretty, I think, extensively, just all requirements are dropping. I'm not sure what the nuances will be.
Well, people inside who are not vaccinated are supposed to wear masks, but that's clearly it's just self-selection. I did notice if you get the weekly phone call from Jamie on Thursday evenings.
Yep.
Last week, it made a reference to pending legislation. I forget exactly how she said it. It was a little vague, but what I interpreted it to mean is that there's legislation looking at the possibility of making town meetings like this permanently allowable on a virtual format, because historically they were not. It always, you all had to be there in person. People couldn't even phone in. You were either there or you couldn't vote or opine. And I got the impression the state may be looking at changing that. So I think as of now, we're still running under the executive orders, which is what allows us to meet virtually. So part of it is when those orders end, and if there's any legislative changes that would allow continuation of a virtual meeting on a permanent basis. But again, to me, we need to be getting that information and the guidance from town hall to really know, should we even be thinking about this yet? Or are we going to go to hybrid where people like, what our company does? It's, we've been at 25% and then 50%. People who feel comfortable can come in. People who don't feel comfortable are under no requirement to come in. I just don't know. But then also the town hall would have to have the video equipment. So if half of us were in the room and half were still coming over Zoom or GoToMeeting, can they even accommodate us all being able to see each other? I don't know that they have that ability or not. So it might be an all or nothing. But again, there's just been no information.
My own experience and my family's experience is that the firms aren't trying to pressure anyone to get back too quickly, like it's a target date of like August or September. So it sort of seems that it's going to allow more drifting in and use of the office, but not requirement. And I haven't gotten any better reads than you just explained all that really well from town hall. But what I thought we'd do tonight, and this is just for us all to take our own temperature on it, and so it allows us to sort of think forward, perhaps what we might want to be suggesting to the town, if we've got feelings on it, is how we all feel about it. And I was going to use that polling mechanism that Zoom has, and they've just added an anonymous check the box, and so even I can't see the poll results, see who's giving what results. So I was gonna, if you all don't object, if you think this is a good idea, ask everybody, do they think they'd like to meet in the coming months? And so when I put that poll on, and you all can click, it's a yes, no, and then there's a second question, which is self-explanatory about what conditions you might want to meet under. And I thought maybe it'd just help if we do this periodically to see how we're all feeling. Is that good with everybody?
Good with me.
All right, not seeing any no's, so I'll launch this poll, which is just fun in itself. You all see that? And so I guess it doesn't allow me to vote, so I'll have to reveal to you, show the accurate numbers. And let's see, we've got,
Bill, my only comment on that is the way the question is phrased.
Yep.
Says, am I ready to do that? Which to me says, if town hall says you must now meet in person, am I willing to do that? And so my answer personally was yes. But is that what I would prefer to do? Probably no.
okay, that's
So-
good point. Okay, and so I think I swing towards yes. I guess I'll be the one, the second non-anonymous here. But, I think what we're seeing though is several people not yet comfortable, at least with this, how this question's phrased. And I think that's meaningful. So. You all see that? Oh, I have to share results. Ready? Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So I think that has some interest, and we don't have everyone here. Obviously, we're missing a couple of people, but 3 people is significant. So, and let's see, I think I had one other question, which was, let's see, how do you do a second question?
It disappeared.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to launch the second question, which I don't seem to be doing. Let me try something else.
No, it's up. Oh no, that's question 1.
Yeah, that was what I already asked, right? So I had a second question. I don't know how to. Sorry, I seem to be not able to launch the second question, which I've done before. I don't know what. One more try and I'll give up. The second question, I was just asking if there are any conditions which would make you more comfortable, such as wearing masks or us getting a larger room. I'm sorry, I can't do the second poll, sorry. But I was just wondering if there are any conditions that would make some people more comfortable, like, getting a large room rather than a small room, or wearing masks while we have our meeting. We can ask that another time, but clearly we have some people in this meeting who are not yet comfortable to go in, even without knowing what town hall would say. So we just keep taking people's temperature. We're in a transition zone, so I want to not miss our window to jump back into being full human beings if we're all comfortable, but don't want to push people that way either. Because I think Zoom's working, just not as warmly as we'd all like in life, right?
Bill, just as a point of information, at channel 79, we are working on making room 206 a hybrid room. Where basically, you can attend in person, but they'll be able to take Zoom feed and integrate it into 2 monitors in the room. So that you eventually will be able to do a in-person / hybrid Zoom type meeting.
Hey, can you remind me which is 206? Is that the little room or is that the larger?
It's the big one upstairs that the selectmen use,
Selectmen, yeah.
which is very hard to get.
Yeah. But there are nights you can get it. It's usually, unfortunately, the end of the week.
When I've envisioned going back, I've sort of thought of, is it room 119 in the lower portion? If the doors are open, you can have a big wide meeting where everyone is 6 feet apart. I've sort of envisioned that feeling like a safer return landing zone, but
Well, if people are happy with 206, we'll get the funding for 119. We could do it in there as well.
I'll keep inquiring.
One baby step at a time.
Right. I'll keep inquiring at town hall, and Lori, if you hear some news, if you pass it on, I don't necessarily think I'll get it otherwise.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Let's see, I had just a couple other things, Lori. These are the if found stickers, and I did succeed in getting 150 of those shipped to Jim Coughlin.
Yep.
Coughlin. And so he's going to do some sort of mail out to the town kayak rack holders.
Okay, good.
So I'm glad you suggested that.
Hey, Bill, are there more of those? There are also kayaks over at Norotan Yacht Club that we could put them on, including Norotan has club kayaks also.
Well,
Okay,
Darien Boat Club, Tom Bell had asked for them. Tom, I've got a pack of 30 for you. But what I might tell you, and I can split these or something between you and Norotan, but what I might tell you both, if you call up CT Deep, they both are like, how many do you need? I'll send them to you right away. So I got 150, and it sounded like they'll just ship them off in a heartbeat. So
okay. Do you know who at Deep?
um,
Could you just
honestly,
find?
honestly, I think I just called the number, or it's very obvious on their website. Tom, I'll come back to you on that.
Okay,
They're
Um,
handing it out at the boat club already.
they're handing out,
Those stickers, they gave me 2 on Saturday when I dropped my kayaks off.
oh, okay.
So if you've got an initial batch, Tom, maybe I'd give this other batch to Flip. What do you think?
I don't, yeah, if the boat club is going to use their own, that's fine. So, you can give them to Flip.
So I'll coordinate with you how to get them.
Yeah.
The one thing, if we're going to do anything, is we need to get the spelling error on the large format warning lines that you gave me, Bill.
And what was the spelling you told me, and I forgot, sorry.
You should have either a whistle of cell phone. I don't know if you noticed that, Lori, when those were created, but maybe you can get some more, but it's the large 8.5 by 11 notices that the boat club and others have put around their kayak racks. And it's got,
2022, that's hardly an error. I make that error every day.
no, well, this one was, it's the 4 things you should do. And item number 2, and I didn't keep one here, is you should travel with a whistle of cell phone as opposed to whistle or cell phone. So if they're going to be redone, they should be corrected.
I don't know if I'm would be inclined to reprint all. I sort of think it might get the message, but I can certainly correct it for another run, because if they come down and more get reprinted.
Yeah, well, I had the boat club people change the of to or with a magic marker.
Ah, well, thank you. The fault lies not with Parks and Rec, Tom, but with me on that. I must have, that's one of those spell check things that get by you because they're still a word.
It's- Okay.
Maybe
Thank
there's a whistle cell phone app. You don't have to worry about it.
I appreciate that. And on any replacements, Tom, I'll get that fixed. I'm not sort of inclined to go around and restaple them all, but I appreciate that.
Sam, I thought I was Parks and Rec. My mistake. Sorry, Larry. Didn't mean to dish you,
No.
Lori.
No problem.
It's embarrassing when you rely on the spell check to do things. It obviously doesn't do everything. Let's see, the only thing else I had to mention was, I don't know if you all paid attention, but or caught the news rather, but on Friday, the Blue Plan came into official existence. The Senate in Connecticut passed it. So that's now the law of Connecticut, which is sort of neat. And, we had good input on that. Flip, I think you put some good shoulder to that. Tom Lochtefeld, I know you definitely did. And if Frank Kemp was here, I'd give him a big round of applause because he
Yeah.
spent a lot of time.
Yeah, that's sort of funny. I saw that come through on my email and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was before COVID.
Yeah, like a decade ago. I don't know if you guys bump into Kevin Marks also. I know, Tom, you live next to him. He did a lot via on behalf of the Norotan Yacht Club. And they gathered some other voices up and down the coast also that helped a lot with some of the sailing zones.
I'll give him accolades when I see him.
Yeah, no, I think Darien put in a good, good lift for our region, and the guys at Nature Conservancy acknowledge that. So that's sort of neat. We'll see if it, is raised in the future as a tool or reference point for, fighting something, either plus or minus on the environmental side or industrial side or town rights side or whatever, but it's meant to be, a tool that's used in all those discussions where there's land use or water use issues. So that'd be interesting. We'll see. I think it was a good effort. So that's it for me. Switch over to the Harbor Masters report.
Nothing to really report, just everybody's starting to get into the season, so the Coast Guard buoys and the no wake zone buoys are going in this week. I talked to Jeff Ang about that, so you'll see those popping in the water, and that's about all that's going on. It still is a crazy season. Got 2 calls over the weekend. I bought a boat. I need a mooring.
Yeah.
5 years. And I don't know if I told you the funny, just a complete aside, I was working with this guy who was trying to buy a 40-foot sailboat. He was looking for a mooring. So I set him up, but I started talking to him about it, and he's never handled a sailboat, never driven one. He has 2 children and a wife, 3 children and a wife, and he wanted a slip. And I said, well, we don't do that. You can get a mooring, but it'd be way outside. But how are you going to get to your mooring? And we talked about the Norotan Yacht Club and the Darien Boat Club. And I said, the problem you may have with the 40-foot boat is getting off the Darien boat launch up onto the boat. How tall are the sides of the boat? Well, I don't know. Long story short, what I tried to convince him to do was to go into one of these programs or clubs where you can buy, you buy your way in for a year to see if they like boating. And I thought he was going to go do it, because he went away for a couple of weeks and came back and said, no, we're going to go to Stanford where they have a slip. I said, okay.
Good luck.
But that was probably my most interesting discussion of, I bought a boat, I need a mooring. So anyway, I thought it was funny.
Did you know what he got? What type of sailboat?
No, he was a 40-foot boat that he,
Is there a name we should avoid when we
That's
see
what
him?
I was thinking. What name do we need to avoid?
I don't know if he even got the name on the boat yet. I don't know if he thought about that yet. It really was one of those things. It's like, do you really, are you really gonna, what happens if your kids don't like it and you bought, this flip, a 40-foot sailboat, a couple $100,000 or something? I don't know.
Depends on what he bought. Could be a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's
Could be
just
a
like,
lot less than that too.
but anyway, I thought it was interesting.
All I want to say, though, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's not. We don't need those people out there.
No. Safety
They're
issues if the kids are
dangerous.
small.
Yeah,
They're
they were
dangerous
small.
to themselves and they're dangerous to other people.
Someone's got to mark the rocks for us.
Fair.
One of those signs they have in the UK for learner drivers, a big L on the back.
I mean, with the little kids, we don't go out if we don't have one adult for every kid, honestly, and then you gotta have hands to, it's just not safe.
I wonder if the power squadron, simultaneous with all this increase in boating activity, if their class ranks have filled up for the license or some of the elective courses. I don't know if that would be reflected in Darien proper, but in Fairfield County and the several.
I did ask him if he had his certification. He didn't know what that was.
Oh dear.
So I told him he can do it online at the state, or you can go to, I mentioned the Darien Power Squadron.
How do you even get insurance? I mean, don't you have to, when you get insured, I think you have to provide your license and stuff, don't you? I think
I don't think so.
you did.
You don't have to even tell them you've
I
been on a
think-
boat.
Lori, I think if you have it, they ask you for it, but I don't think it's a mandatory,
Okay.
if or not, you know?
Okay, because I know Doug said he submitted, and we did take a Power Squadron course over the winter, and they were saying that if you, for every course you take, you know, you go to your insurance agent and they may take another $50 off your premium, which we tried and they didn't, but but Doug said he's definitely in the past submitted our, you know, basic licenses and kind of course list and stuff.
Well, how are the clubs doing? Thought we'd just get an update on your opening activities.
Tom, I'll leave that to you.
If you don't know,
I haven't been
'cause
down there, but I'm still immobile.
you're talking to Tom Lochtefeld or Tom me? Tom Bell?
Anybody.
If you don't know, I'm kind of silly and stupid. I'm also the vice at the Darien Boat Club. We opened up basically a week early. I was down there yesterday. Tom, what do you think? About a third of the boaters are on?
Yeah, probably. I was thinking I should probably send out a note soon, being that there's less than a month left to get all the boats in.
Yep. Water's on, power's on. Where our first picnic is June 6th. We're going to go forward with that, at least as the time moves on, is our current course and speed, and then maintain the picnics throughout the year, including our end of year big soiree with the tents in the parking lot. We're still planning to do that. And I think the membership up now is upwards about 715, 720, Tom, I think you talked about.
Yeah, I think it's been the highest in a while now. Certainly since 2008, when we had over 800 member families.
So
I think the marinas are really backed up getting the boats and we're definitely 2 weeks behind where we had
Is that right?
expected to be. They're just jamming, and the subcontractors that you use. Flip, we're using your guy Alonzo.
Yeah.
We met him. He was working on your boat and we were on our boat, and he recognized our boat and he came over and said, "Isn't that such and such?" I said, "Yeah, we bought it from him." And long story short, now he's doing work for us, but he's way backed up.
Yeah.
So they're just all really backed up. So, but they put us in a really nice dock in the water. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just sit here and enjoy this very nice dock for 2 weeks till you tell me my boat's ready.
Good.
All right, I've heard that across the board too, and it just, everyone is busy, and there's more demand than there ever was, and there's less qualified people.
Yep.
There's good and bad stories out there, but everyone's just busy.
Yep.
So it's the way of the world.
Yeah, parts are hard to get. It took us 6-7 months to get a part we needed, which we finally got, thankfully. And everybody blames everything on COVID, whether COVID should really have anything to do with it or not.
Everybody blames everything on COVID.
I know. I said that to my daughter this week, and she runs a little tour boat operation down in Charleston. She goes, "Oh yeah, I use that all the time."
Right. We had 3 people who were issued slips this year who just couldn't find boats or couldn't find a boat that fit their needs. We ended up taking their slip back and reissuing it to the next people. But then just last week, I had a person who called and said, my 18-foot boat, they tell us that the engine bolts are rusted and it's not going to last through the season. We want to upgrade. Do you have a slip? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, the guy just furloughed this morning. You could have the slip if you can get a boat, but good luck. They found a boat within 3 days down in Florida. They went down and sea trialed the boat. And by the end of the week, they are shipping the boat back up here to Darien to have a larger boat for the summer. So that was pretty impressive commitment there.
very expensive.
How's Norton Yacht Club doing? Grant or?
They're up and running. All the docks are in. I think racing started last weekend, but everything's go. Very few restrictions due to COVID for this summer. So I think it's all good.
Nice to hear. Are there any changes in the mooring field? I was just noticing some boats out there on different moorings than I would expect, and that was just making me curious if there'd been any reshufflings or anything.
Some of those are positional until they get the hardware in the water.
All right, just sort of figuring that, but I saw a larger number shuffled around than I thought, so. All right, well, I thought we then shift if that sort of handles us for the clubs to the mooring standards review. Dave, Flip, is there a little something to report there? I know Rob was going to download to you, Dave, some of his information.
I am way behind on doing that. So I have no report.
Yeah, maybe we could just give an update where we all were. We had a call 3 or 4 weeks ago with Flip, myself, Dave, and Rob Shuhey. And Dave, maybe give us an outline of that, would that be a fair question?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I just was wondering if maybe you'd outline sort of the task you all set out to do, what you've got underway from that call.
Basically looking at harbors that are exposed to bad, potential bad weather up and down the coast of Long Island Sound, and it has been suggested that we look as far as Martha's Vineyard, which has not been done. I've been researching who I should call and who I should check on, but we divided it up that I'm thinking east of here, and as I said, I'm way behind, and I apologize.
I guess what we're trying to find analogous harbors, ones that have pretty robust conditions, open exposures to
Yeah,
wind and wave.
Not looking at ones that are totally robust or sheltered. Just ones that would have the same type of potential damage as Darien Harbor would. And what kind of mooring standards they have, if any.
The one thing I would add from the Norotan Yacht Club perspective is, especially for some of the newer big boats this year, I think we're trying a whole new mooring system where it's basically all chain to the mooring float, and the chain comes up through the center of the mooring float, and then there's a big shackle on the end of the chain. So 100% of the structure below the water is chained, and then there's just a short pennant from that shackle on the float up to the boat. And I understand, the new facilities manager at Norotan used to run kind of a mooring business in the North Shore of Long Island for many years. And that's kind of the construction he has used historically. It offers the advantage of not actually having an underwater connection between a chain, section of chain and a heavy pennant line. And that if for the people who have been involved in this project, one of the big points of potential failure that we were seeing is in that connection between the chain and the line and the thimbles that are used in that connection. And so this new construction gets rid of that whole connection entirely. And so it also provides a can type mooring float rather than a sphere. And the can type mooring float has a place that you can put your mooring pin, your pickup pin in, and your bridle, so that it doesn't get in the water when you leave the mooring. And if you go away for a week or something like that, and your mooring bridle gets all full of seaweed and other bad stuff. So I think a couple of the moorings are going to be fitted out in that fashion this year so that we can sort of see how those work. I can't see any reason why that would be worse than our current mooring construction in terms of strength and durability. It may be better. So we're just kind of experimenting with that.
It
The
sounds-
thought always of having a rope bridle for the aspect that sat, it's in the water, was that heavy chain would sit in the mud, protecting it from rusting and kind of deteriorating, because the mud kind of protects it. And then when a storm comes, that chain gets pulled tight from that rope and pulls on.
The current construct is, even now, is a section of heavy chain, then a section of lighter chain, so a bottom chain and a light chain.
Correct.
So it's
the top
basically
chain being sacrificial, replaced more often.
Yes, and so it's basically just making the top chain a little bit longer and replacing, for many moorings, it's like 10 or 12 feet of nylon pennant, which that doesn't, that wouldn't be the part that is either sitting or not sitting in the mud under any circumstance.
Yes. Okay.
Question,
It would
where
be.
is the swivel?
The swivel is, I think, between the top chain and the bottom chain.
Right, but on the new system, does it come up through the buoy as well? And then,
The swivel, there still is a top chain and a bottom chain on the new system. It's just that the top chain is longer and goes all the way through up to the surface. And then, but there's still a swivel between the two sections of chains.
Flip, when I saw your email on this, I wondered if, and I understand this is something you guys are looking into, and it sounds like there'll be a passage of time before you know if it's like a preferred design. But it made me wonder if there's two things we're going at here, because the standard as written is a minimum design, as Tom Bell has pointed out a couple of times. And I guess a minimum design is thinking of like, it's widespread, right? And it's attainable. It's not so expensive that, we're precluding people from being able to easily do it, et cetera. And then I wonder if there's a best, a recommended, and that like what you're going after might be a recommended. I wonder if we might. No,
I don't think, at least in my own personal mind, I'm not looking to come up with a two-class system. Because when you think about it, the biggest risk out there, you can lose your own boat, and you can decide whether you want to spend a certain amount of money to protect your boat or not spend a certain amount of money to protect your boat. But if your boat goes adrift, it can be wrecking all the other boats in the harbor too. So it doesn't seem to me that we should come up with a situation where we say, oh, if somebody doesn't want to pay that much, they can use polypropylene line. But if they really want to do a nice job for themselves, they can use chain. We should come up with something that we think does the job adequately with sufficient margin of comfort, and that should just be the way we do it. Because if you give some people like a cheaper option that is less what I'll call safe, then it's really a false economy, because you're putting everybody else's boats at risk.
I guess my question probably only has relevance if the thing you're working on now, for example, represents a real jump in cost, or people can't switch over to it fast enough. Maybe there's a transition zone we need to think about.
Well, yeah, first of all, it would be transitioning. All of these things would phase in, and it would not be like a single year everybody needs to change. It would be, you would change over at the end of the useful life of your current equipment, I would think. But the other thing is, some of these, like this all, to hear Hank Warwick, our, well, kind of waterfront manager, talk about it, the all chain approach is much cheaper to service on an annual basis. It costs more, but it's much cheaper to service because you don't have as many connections that you've got to be fiddling around with, and you don't have to be painting. You know, a lot of those heavy pennants are painted with bottom paint, and they don't get painted. The chain doesn't get painted. So there may be, there may be some offsetting annual cost benefit to the potentially slightly higher upfront benefit, upfront cost.
Do you think the findings that Dave and Rob come up with might support what the suggested changes? That are these up in use up and down the coast, you think? Or?
I personally expect that survey will show that a lot of people do it a lot of different ways, and that there's not one clear, best practice. And it sort of depends on the harbor. It sort of depends on the history of that harbor. I don't think we're going to find that there's like a gold standard and that's the clear thing to do. I think we're going to find that a lot of people do it differently.
Yeah. Well, the other thing they may find, Dave and Rob, Rob not being here, what's changed? Have they been beefing things up over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? So trend, I think, would be an interesting thing, even if the findings are all different.
Like, wouldn't all chain be really jerky though? Like what I learned in my power squadron course, and you guys are 100 times more than I do, is that you need some line to sort of absorb and give as the bow's going up and down, and it was just like
it's actually the line itself is, when you look at the size of those nylon pennants, those are which is the nylon pennant, which is the section between the current chain and goes up to then goes to the mooring float and then attaches to the bridle. That is, like, on many cases, 1-inch nylon, and it's not stretching. It's just so big and beefy. But what is providing the shock absorption capability is just the catenary, the weight of the chain. It takes a lot of energy to pull it bar tight. And so that provides, in I think most normal circumstances, a fair amount of shock absorption. But you do also then have the bridles themselves. But frankly, the trend on bridles is to go towards Dyneema, which is not stretchy, so that it doesn't stretch back and forth across your chocks and abrade the line.
Interesting.
Well, so Dave, we'll wait to see what you and Rob, next progress report, what you guys start to find out. Maybe just first what yacht clubs or marinas you feel are valid to bring into discussion here, and then maybe start showing us some, tables or something of what they're actually doing and trends. So we had a couple other things on action discussions. One, we had some really interesting discussion last time on creatively addressing the mooring weights. And there's some interesting, Bill Wright brought up some interesting points on that with regard to Cove Marina. Is that what I think it's called? Yes. And Tom Lochtefeld, sounded like you were involved in that also. I saw some emails, but perhaps you guys can summarize a little. You were doing some fact finding, and I think Tom Lochtefeld and presenting some ideas for the Darien Boat Club members.
Yeah, I actually went out to, we're talking about the slips, right? The open slips at the, okay, sorry. Yeah, I posted the information on our website, the DBC CT mooringinfo.com website. And I had a few people give me positive feedback and say, hey, thanks. We had no idea. I'm going to go try it. So if it gets a couple people in the water that otherwise maybe wouldn't be in the water, that's great.
And Tom Bell, I forget, some of this piqued your curiosity. Were you thinking of more actively suggesting it to people on the mooring wait lists? I'm not recalling, unfortunately.
No, I wasn't telling people that. Most of the people on my wait list don't have boats. Is the big issue is when I call people up and say, you know, mooring just became available, mooring space just became available, and they go, humana. I wasn't expecting, you know, get the call so soon, especially the smaller classes, the 20s, 24s. So
I just thought this was sort of a really neat suggestion by Bill to just sort of service our customers, if you will. If the residents of town are all stymied behind this long wait list, proposing to them some active measures they could take. If I was a young family moving into this town, you know, right now I'd be awfully frustrated that way. So I'm just sort of think it's on us to try to facilitate some other solutions for them. And David Kahn, you had some really interesting ideas and was wondering if you wanted to talk a little about shellfish and some of you've got some ideas that you're.
My crazy oyster idea. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I'm not as far along with it as I'd like to be, but just his background. Bill, I can't remember whether you shared this article with me or vice versa, but we were chit-chatting a while ago about what they're doing on City Island in the Bronx with an oyster project. There's some people there that have been collecting oyster shell and putting it in these, maybe some of you have seen these mesh bags, which are made out of some sort of plastic material, generally black, probably about 18 inches by 3 or 4 feet. And you might see them on Nantucket or Block Island out in a pond or a harbor, and people float them on the surface to cultivate oysters. And they'll be out there flipping them over maybe once a week. I know they do this in the harbor over at Montauk too. So they're doing it in the Bronx at City Island, not for the purpose of creating oysters for consumption, but purely for cleaning the water. And many of you probably know that oysters, I think a mature oyster filters something like 50 gallons of water a day. So they're great water filters for the sound. And so I was thinking, wow, you know, if they're doing this on City Island, you know, I wonder what we could do in Darien. And so I was noodling around on some websites of just buying a little gear myself as an experiment and throwing it out behind my boat at the boat club. And before I did that, I thought, well, you know, why don't I just check in with somebody at the Department of Aquaculture, or my first call was to Tessa Getchis at Sea Grant. I just said, hey, you know, would love to think about doing something that cleans the water. And here was what I was thinking. And I quickly got a, whoa, don't even think about putting out any gear without getting approval from the state. That would be a really bad idea. You have to get a permit to do that. And there are all sorts of different things that the state, you know, would want to know. So hold your horses. And but as we talked about it a little bit more, she kind of warmed up to the idea and suggested, hey, why don't you reach out to Dave Carey? And some of Dave Carey is the director of the Department of Agriculture. And, you know, their concerns, you know, one that in growing out any kind of oysters in a restricted area that someone might come and steal those and eat them and get sick. So you have to have security. Well, there are a lot of cameras at the boat club and there's a night watchman, so there's security. So that kind of instantly, kind of piqued a little bit of interest on their part. And the area is pretty isolated, and there's concern that if you're cultivating oysters, you might create some sort of disease event, which would then affect someone's commercial shellfishing operation. So Dave Carey said, well, you have security, it's fairly isolated. That might be a great place for doing a test. And we're actually working on a shellfish restoration, rehabilitation, enhancement plan that we want to get done by the fall of 2021. And Tessa has a grant to think about some test sites, and your site might be particularly well located. So I talked to Tom Lochtefeld about it. I talked to Tom Bell about it. I certainly wouldn't want to do anything that would upset anyone at the boat club, but my initial thinking was, we'll just do kind of a small test and, have a couple bags and see if we could grow out some oysters in some way. So anyway, across the board, there seems to be some openness to, both with the state and with the constituents, at least with Tom and Tom, towards doing something. So I'd like to see if maybe we could draft a little bit of a team and Dave Carey sent me an application for, the process of starting to think about such a thing. I'd like to think about it. I think maybe we could do something small as a test to see about cleaning our water in some small way and raising awareness around cleaning our water and the role that shellfish have in doing that. So anyway, I got a little charged up about the notion of doing something positive and just wanted to throw it out there. I haven't formalized anything, just had some conversations with folks.
David, you mentioned the physical case and the floats in which the small oysters are cultivated. And did I get it right that that's sort of like a person or a family who owns a boat at the boat club could put one of those between their floats or beside their boat? That they're that small, or what's your sort of idea there?
Yeah, well, I guess everyone's kind of configured a little differently relative to where their frog hooks are. Maybe you could have it between your transom and where your frog hooks are, or maybe it's somewhere off the bow of your boat, but wouldn't want it to interfere with anybody who's going by. These are fairly small. Again, I think it's about 18 inches by 3 or 4 feet and have some, little PVC floats on the side of them. And think you could probably squeeze, some in behind some boats here and there without interfering with anybody or creating something that's unsightly. And what you they come in different mesh sizes, and there are lots of ways of doing this. Some people would put very small seed oyster in there, something that might look like the size of a dime, and try to grow that out to something larger. Or you could just put old oyster shell in there, and that is a place where larvae would set on that oyster shell and grow out. We obviously have no budget for buying a seed oyster. Maybe someone would donate some to us. I don't know. But there are a couple different ways you could approach it. And I'd like to think through that with the state and you all.
And then would they, let's say a family signed up to do this and they had their own little cultivation of oysters, what do you think the end result is? Would there be a place where they would then put them in the water, off Darien or something to be harvested by one of our lessees, or what do you think is the end result?
It's a good question, and one that I don't really know the answer to. I'd like to think that you could use it for oyster restoration in some way, shape, or form. You can collect seed oyster, or you could theoretically collect seed oyster up to a certain size in a restricted area like the Goodwives River, and then put it out somewhere for it to be cultivated to a larger size to be used for human consumption. a lot of open questions about all that.
I have a funny vision in my head, the freights swinging by with their boat to pick up a boatload of kids to take their oysters out to a bed. I don't know if that ever could happen, but it's sort of a nice thought to have one of our lessees doing some public service on the back end of something like this.
So I think I don't know, I envision it as kind of an experiment, but again, haven't had enough conversations to know where this could go.
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea. I don't know, we've got, I know, Tom Lochtefeld, you've had a lot of interest in the shellfish. I know Eric Barrett does. You need a couple helpers. I think maybe we could all think about that a bit.
So I have a call into Tessa to try to talk to her about it a little more and see what some of the open questions are, and maybe with a few more calls, we could think about what a plan might look like, and I could come back to the group next time around with a little bit more information.
Right. I could think of a couple places at the club where we have sort of dead space at the intersections of docks and things like that. That would be, I think, a good place to put them. I have talked over with the board.
I think, Tom, based on what the application process for this looks like, this would be a 2022 event, best case scenario. So I think the application process with the state for putting gear out is not insignificant.
Like so much red tape.
Exactly. So anyway, all these conversations both kind of got me depressed and excited at the same time. It's 10 times more complicated than I ever thought it would be, and would probably take 10 times longer than I ever thought it would be. But at the same time, people were kind of encouraging, which is which you sometimes don't get from state officials. So that was good.
Yeah. Just a quick question, Dave. I mean, I see more oysters now than I've ever seen. You drive down at low tide and you look over the road and they're just beds everywhere filled with oysters.
Yeah.
So why are you trying to grow more on the dock if there's all these naturally formed beds that are going on? I mean, I'm just curious to know what that would add aside from being cool.
I mean, I think even with all those oysters, the water still has plenty of stuff to be filtered out of it. So I don't, were the water crystal clear in our little Darien Harbor there, I think I'd probably say this isn't worth our time. But I think in some very small and probably insignificant way, we might be doing some good, but I think the larger objective might be to raise a little awareness.
Right on.
Yeah, I think the being cool is maybe most important. When Tom Lochtefeld, I think David, you joined him when you two took those families out clamming on our public beds. I just thought that was, I think you may have done that twice now, but like a public.
Yeah, just met
clamming
down at the gas dock and went out with a few folks.
I just think that's like fantastic activity. I saw some young kids doing that for the first time with their parents. And if you could get that same type of excitement from, and maybe it's smaller kids, I don't know, or maybe it's older kids doing the growing, but for them to sort of, that would probably cause them to notice the oysters in the river. Where they're probably just driving by them now, not even thinking about them, just thinking it's crud on the bottom. I just think that's neat stuff to spark.
All right, well, hearing no big objections, we'll keep thinking and talking about it. But this is a longer term effort, so stay tuned.
Yeah, keep us informed. That really sounds great. I was going to share a screen, and this just came to me, and it links in so well with what David's thinking. And I think he's mentioning parts of it. Kristen Bannock DeRosio outreach to me, and this isn't, yes, it is. Sorry, it's our last, it's the last item on the shellfish report. She outreached to me and told me that the Connecticut Shellfish Restoration Program is coming to Darien, Goodwives River, and 5 Mile River on June 1st, and wants to know if anyone wants to join them in surveying what we have for oysters up and down those rivers. I'm going to get more details. I'll send those on to you all so you can see if it might present an interesting hour or 2 or 3 to, I don't know, be in a boat with them or walk around in the muck. I'm not really quite sure what they're doing. But Kristen will be there, and they'd like someone from us to be there. It's June 1st. I don't know what time in the day. And in relation to that, they sent along something I just sent you out by email this afternoon, the Connecticut Shellfish Restoration Plan Working Group's story map. Did people have a chance to see that? But if you didn't, I'm going to bring it up right now for share screen. So I'll do this. Can people see my screen?
Yep.
So this is the Connecticut Shellfish Restoration story map that came along with their email. And it's a interactive like GIS coordinate thing of the Connecticut coast. And I've just got it zeroed in on our area. And like the Connecticut Blue Plan, it uses GIS data, and you can bring it in by clicking on the layers to the right. And so, and all this is data which is surrounding the idea of restoring more shellfish beds in our area and making a more vibrant shellfish industry in Connecticut. And apparently they've got some funding to do that. I have to look into that more. I'm not sure if that's come through the Long Island Sound study or where their funding is, but it's an active program at aquaculture. And so here's our area, and you can punch in, for example, chlorophyll to see. Not all of them have popped up. There we go. So for example, this is chlorophyll and dissolved oxygen levels in our air. So they list this under shellfish production factors. So you can check around the coves in your locale and see where they're measuring various production factors. And these sites that you see, there's basically 4 here in Cove and 4 in Norotan Harbor, and then 4 over in Scott Cove area, Fish Island, Ziegler's. Those are our unified water study sites. And so they're picking up the data that we've been measuring for the last 4 years. So that was sort of nice to see that being used for this. And then here's the more interesting thing. I'll pop those off and, whoops, sorry, and show you what our shellfish restoration projects. And I've got to just move our, can everyone see the fuchsia that just popped up? Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently these are shellfish restoration projects that they're working on at CT Aquaculture through this group. And nothing in Darien, but something in 5 Mile River, nothing in our major bays, but in the river on the west side, they've got a restoration project going. I have no idea what that's about. Is anyone aware of that? And likewise, you know, a lot going on up here. And if you pan out a little, they've got stuff really all up and down our coast, just east of us. And that really made me wonder what we're missing. You know, why didn't they eyeball our areas and say shellfish restoration needs to happen there? And I don't really know what the shellfish restoration programs, the projects here, exactly what they're doing, but I thought we should figure that out. And maybe that's, you know, the backdrop of why Dave's getting such receptivity is that we're reaching out to try to do something positive here, and they've been trying to do things like that in various communities prior to this point. Anyway, I thought you might enjoy that website, so I sent it around and you can look on it yourself. It's basically picking up a lot of data that the Unified Water Study and the Blue Plan has put out there already. So I had just one more item I was going to bring up, and it's sort of an important one. And Eric Barrett was going to drive the discussion before he felt ill this evening. And this is on freight in Scott Cove. And so I think we talked last week that Town Hall had decided that we'd kept the freights out of Scott Cove long enough that it'd be good for them to, get some business back. They've had a tough year. It would be good for our Scott Cove to get its bottom invigorated and not let it weed over so much. And getting more clams in there would be a generally healthy thing. So we all told like the idea of, and getting our replenishment of clams for our public clamming beds would be good. So all told, we thought it's, after this couple year and a half hiatus, it was okay to let the freights back into Scott Cove as long as they were obeying the shellfish regulations and our lease standards. So we relayed that to CT Aquaculture, and they were fine with that. And then to our surprise, or I'll say my personal surprise, I was out doing the first session of the Unified Water Study 2 Mondays ago, last Monday. And who should I see working Scott Cove at 6 in.the morning but the Rita Grace, much to my surprise, because we haven't issued a license or engaged in any licensing process with CT Aquaculture to yet get them back in. And also the leases for Scott Cove are always December through March, and some years we've granted April also. So December through April. And here it was a week into May, and there was the Rita Grace working back and forth actively with, the clam suction down in the bottom and water pouring out the boat. So no, not just taking a cruise, but actively working it. So I immediately called the freights and said that wasn't allowed. I was disturbed by it. But they immediately told me that Dave Carey had given them a permit. So went up gave a call to Dave Carey, head of CT Aquaculture, and sure enough, he had issued them a permit right away when we had said it was okay to get him back in Scott Cove. Forgetting that we have a separate agreement we also attached to that state permit, which specifies the quid pro quo of the clams in the public clamming beds, the 50 bushels. And that we want to see the logs of what comes out of Scott Cove, and that we have an insurance requirement, and that we have a date requirement of December through April at the latest. And so David just issued them a license through the end of May without thinking about any of those details that had existed on prior licensings of Scott Cove. So I don't think the freights were doing anything wrong in their mind when they went in there, and they promptly offered to stop going in there, which was nice of them to offer. So that was sort of the mess that happened, and Dave Carey readily admitted that it all sort of fumbled with good intent. So here's the question, though, I wanted to put before the group, and Tom Bell, I particularly am interested in your answer on this. They currently have a valid license from Dave Carey to go to work Scott Cove through the end of May. And if we can just verify that they have the required insurance that usually the town requires, and I'm forgetting what that level is now, I think it's $3 million general liability, but I'd have to check. would there be any problem of just allowing them to continue this next couple of weeks? They've already been working it a week or so, or 10 days. They want to go in there and irrigate some of the grounds to get them, they think that helps for cultivation in the coming winter. And they wanted to just keep working that. It's valid by the state. Immediately, what came to my mind, Tom, are the moorings and the boating activity that might be established. And are they going to, according to their license of us, when we put that forward, we tell them to take due care around all those moorings, and obviously they're incented to do so. But we haven't let them in prior in May because of our concern for boats and moorings. And, this would be an exception. We've sort of slid into this position accidentally by aquaculture's mistake. And I'm wondering what you all think of just letting the freights continue for the next 2 weeks, because it's, I don't know, just not so much whiplash back and forth on them.
Well, the moorings are being installed as we speak. My mooring is already in Scott Cove, and a bunch of them are there. So they just have to be careful of where they're going to do it. I mean, where they're going to clam. I don't know what beds they're looking at, but there's probably 30 moorings already in Scott Cove.
Tom, do those moorings get hauled out in the winter, or do they just get winter sticked?
Winter sticked. Some
Yes,
of them, some of them don't even get winter sticked. Like mine doesn't get winter sticked.
So Bill, those moorings are down on the bottom all year round.
That was my impression also. But I also had wondered how many boats at this point are in there. I think one of our feelings of relegating it to April at the latest in prior years has been just to not have them running around people's boats if people are trying to have a relaxing Sunday morning or the like.
Well, they always do it at dead low, so that helps a little bit. But I mean, I've had my mooring in Scott Cove for, I don't know, almost 10 years, I guess, by now. And I've never seen them come in anywhere close to my mooring if I've been there. I mean,
They
sometimes
usually
just
head out at like 5:30 in the morning, and I think they're usually back by around 11 or 12.
yeah.
Do you think the neighbors in this boating season, for a couple of weeks of May, would be awfully bothered by the noise in the morning? I mean, I know that we've allowed that to happen throughout the spring, so I don't know why a couple of weeks in May would be such a big difference. But
if you're talking about neighbors on land, there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, these are licensed, in theory, shell fishermen, and they have the right to do it whenever they want, unless their contract says that they can't start before a certain time. But as Flip said, those guys get up. They're out at very early, and they're coming back by 11 o'clock in the morning.
They've been doing it for a lot longer than the new guy that just bought a house on the water that doesn't know what he's getting into.
yeah, I think we've all should have
I don't think you should hinder anything that they're doing as long as they're following the rules to make a living and do so and survive.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things. You bought a waterfront house.
100%.
And this is one of the, I don't want to call it an issue. This is one thing that happens when you have a waterfront house.
Yeah. Well, the issue has been following the rules, and the rules have been loosely followed at best.
I agree, but again, there's no enforcement.
well,
But there is GPS tracking, correct?
No, I don't think they have a GPS on that boat, do they?
no, they've got a state installed GPS.
Oh, they do.
You're right on a navigation GPS, but the state tracks them and knows when they've come or gone and where they've come or gone, which is how they got into the issue in the first place and why we suspended it. But I like people's sentiments. I mean, I think town hall is also inclined to have a working fisherman be able to do his trade.
But he's been doing it in town for 30 something years. You should encourage it.
Well, we have been, and that was one of our troubles with Scott Cove. We were encouraging it, and then we all got some of the rules were violated. So we're trying to let that person come back in and let them make it all happen correctly, rather than to be any mistakes again that could lead to a suspension of license if there's another mistake. So we don't want that to happen. So I'm trying to make sure this happens smoothly. And this twist with aquaculture, has not been the smoothest thing. And I'm not sure that they've got the insurance in place that we normally require as a town. And so if something were, we have to check that, because things have gone faster than we could check. And, that could be grant an issue if a boat was struck and they didn't have the proper license. And that could be the type of thing which would snap back on them in a way we don't want to happen. We want everyone to be covered and it being done properly. But I think your instincts are good, and I'm hearing it from others that let's figure out a way to let this guy make a living and use our natural resources to do so, because he's our local guy, and has been here for a long time. So what I think I'm clearly hearing is no one sees a reason not to let him finish up May. And then we'll just get back on our schedule of December through April, or I think maybe we could go into May in another year if people aren't objecting, and give him a little bigger window to work these beds.
Is he harvesting clams right now as he works these beds?
Well, he said he hasn't been having any luck. He's said that what's just been happening, he's been bringing up seagrasses and the like. But he says he wants to do that to get the beds working again, which is exactly why I think we'd like him there. I think that helps to have Scott Cove, and so does aquaculture. I think it helps to have Scott Cove worked. Gets back to what is a shellfish restoration project? Would it be the freights working Scott Cove regularly? Does that help a lot of stuff grow? So far, we're hearing yes. Anyway, so it's been a bit of a saga, but anyway, this helps, and I think we'll get this straightened out in another day or two, and he'll keep going through the end of May. So if you see him there, I think as long as he's got the insurance, everything's all set.
Gentlemen, I have a hockey game I got to check out. I'm playing tonight.
Good luck. I think we're all done anyway, Dave. Thanks for your
Okay.
explanation of your project.
See you, everybody.
Hey, Dave.
I don't think I could play hockey at 7 minutes and 9. I'm like going the other way. I could play it at 4 in the morning. I got a lot of energy in the morning, but does anyone have any other business to bring up? I think we've covered a lot of topics tonight, but glad to throw another one in if someone's got something.
Well, good here.
Well, I think we're all set then. So if everyone's good to adjourn, I will adjourn. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Joe.
Nice
Very
talking to
nice.
you guys.